The woods were never supposed to be part of the plan. I only wanted to shave a few minutes off my walk home. The sun was already sinking behind the horizon, and I hated being out late, but the urge to get home faster pulled me toward the trail. It was narrow, cutting through thick clusters of trees, and for a moment it felt like I had outsmarted the world, slipping into a hidden path where no one else bothered to tread. But sometimes shortcuts don't save time. Sometimes they cost you everything. At first, the forest was just that: trees, branches, leaves crunching beneath my sneakers. The air smelled damp, earthy, as if the ground itself had never dried after the last rain. The deeper I went, the quieter everything became. The hum of cars on the main road faded until it was nothing more than memory. That's when I realized I wasn't alone. It started subtly. A snap of twigs behind me. A hush of movement that didn't belong to the wind. I slowed, pretending I needed to adjust my bag strap, ears straining for any sound. And there it was, the faint rhythm of footsteps, matching mine but never overlapping. Whoever it was, they were clever. Careful. Keeping their distance. I told myself it was just paranoia. The woods had a way of playing tricks, echoing your own sounds back at you. But the sensation grew heavier, pressing against my skin, crawling into my chest. Someone was there. Following. Watching. I picked up my pace. The path dipped, winding into darker stretches where the canopy smothered the last rays of light. Shadows grew long and distorted, twisting into shapes that almost looked human. I thought about calling out, maybe catching them off guard, but something in my gut screamed not to. Whoever was behind me didn't want to be seen. And if I forced them to show themselves, I might regret what I saw. Minutes stretched like hours. My breathing grew shallow. I tried to convince myself I'd been imagining things, but then it happened again. A deliberate crunch of dry leaves just a few feet behind me. Too close. Too real. I spun around. No one. The path was empty, swallowed in half-darkness. My eyes darted between the trees, but nothing moved. And yet, the forest felt alive. Not in the usual way, not with animals or insects. It was as if the trees themselves were holding their breath, waiting. I pressed forward, my steps faster, more erratic. My mind raced with possibilities. Maybe it was just a hiker, someone else cutting through the woods. Maybe they'd left the path when I turned. Or maybe they were hiding, deliberately keeping out of sight. I couldn't shake the thought that whoever, or whatever it was, didn't want me to make it home. The path forked, splitting into two. I hesitated, heart pounding. Left or right? Both looked equally dark, equally unwelcoming. Behind me, a sound broke the silence. Not just footsteps this time. Breathing. Heavy. Low. The kind of breath that belongs to someone standing just beyond your line of sight. I bolted right. My shoes pounded against the dirt, twigs snapping beneath me. The forest closed in tighter, branches clawing at my arms like skeletal fingers. I didn't care if I scraped myself raw, I just needed out. I needed light. I needed people. But the woods didn't want to let me go. No matter how far I ran, the breathing stayed with me. Always behind me, never ahead. Sometimes closer, sometimes farther, but never gone. My chest burned, my legs ached, but I didn't dare stop. Finally, through the trees, I spotted a faint glow, streetlights. Civilization. My salvation. I pushed harder, desperate, but then the glow flickered, like a dying candle, before vanishing completely. The path had twisted again, pulling me deeper, not closer. I was lost. My body trembled. I dropped my bag, the weight unbearable now, and pressed my back against a tree. My ears strained. The woods had gone silent once more. No footsteps. No breathing. Just silence thick enough to smother me. I told myself to stay still. Maybe if I didn't move, whatever was following me would pass by. Maybe it would lose interest. But then, right by my ear, came a whisper. "Why are you running?" I screamed and stumbled forward, crashing through brush and brambles. My arms tore on thorns, but the pain barely registered. The whisper was too close. Too real. It wasn't just someone behind me, it was something. The forest seemed to shift with each frantic step. The path vanished, replaced by uneven ground and roots that reached for my ankles. The trees pressed closer, bending unnaturally, their trunks forming shapes that resembled faces frozen in silent screams. My breath came in ragged bursts, each exhale a plea for escape. I broke into a small clearing, the first open space I'd seen in what felt like hours. The moon hung low, casting silver light over a circle of stones arranged in the dirt. They looked deliberate, unnatural. I should have turned back, but there was no back anymore. Only forward. Only survival. I stood in the center, chest heaving, eyes darting in every direction. The whisper returned, drifting around me, impossible to pinpoint. You shouldn't have come here. The clearing grew colder. My skin prickled as if invisible hands brushed against me. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, curling and twisting toward me like black tendrils. My instincts screamed at me to run, but the woods no longer offered a way out. Every path I saw bled into darkness, leading nowhere. I fell to my knees, clawing at the dirt, desperate for something, anything, that would break this nightmare. My fingers brushed one of the stones, and instantly the whisper rose into a chorus of voices, shrill and distorted, crying out from all sides. My head spun, ears ringing, vision blurring. Through the chaos, one voice cut clearer than the rest, sharp and commanding. Don't look back. My heart stopped. I hadn't looked back since I entered the clearing. Not once. And now that the words were spoken, the urge was unbearable. I could feel it, whatever had been following me, standing right behind me. So close I could almost feel its breath sliding down my neck. I squeezed my eyes shut, body shaking. The voices pressed harder, louder, begging me to turn. My mind fractured between terror and curiosity. What if turning was the only way to escape? What if not turning trapped me forever? The ground beneath me trembled. The air grew suffocating. And then, without warning, the forest fell silent again. Completely silent. I opened my eyes. The clearing was empty. The stones were gone. The moonlight had vanished. I was standing on the roadside, just steps from my neighborhood. My bag was back on my shoulder, the strap cutting into my skin as if it had never left. For a moment, I thought I had imagined everything. Just panic, exhaustion, my brain conjuring horrors from shadows. But then I saw it, etched into the skin of my arm where the thorns had cut me. Not random scratches, not natural marks. Letters. Words. See you again. I stumbled into the streetlight glow, chest heaving, tears burning my eyes. Home was just down the road, but safety felt farther than it had ever been. Because I knew the truth, taking that shortcut through the woods wasn't the end. It was the beginning. And whatever had followed me wasn't done. When I finally reached my front door, my hands shook so violently that I nearly dropped the keys twice before sliding one into the lock. The metal rattled, scraping against the keyhole as though the door itself resisted being opened. By the time it clicked, I pushed through with all the strength I had left, slammed it shut, and threw the deadbolt into place. The house was dark, the kind of darkness that felt heavier than night. I leaned against the door, chest rising and falling in jagged bursts, listening to the silence on the other side. My ears rang, still tuned to the sounds of that forest, expecting at any moment to hear the crunch of leaves or that low, rasping breath. But there was nothing. Just quiet. I laughed, a short, broken sound, and pressed my palms to my face. It had to have been panic, exhaustion, maybe even dehydration. The woods played tricks, and I had let them sink into my bones. That's all it was. I was home now. Safe. Yet, when I pulled my hands away, my eyes fell to the scratches on my forearm. The words were still there. Clear. Too clear. See you again. The letters burned into my skin as if written with a blade rather than thorns. I pressed my thumb over them, hoping they'd smear, fade, prove themselves to be nothing more than illusion. They didn't. They pulsed faintly, as though the cuts were alive, refusing to heal. I went to the bathroom, flicking on the harsh fluorescent light. My reflection looked worse than I'd imagined, pale, drenched in sweat, wide-eyed with fear I didn't want to admit to. I cleaned the cuts, but no matter how much I rinsed them, the words remained legible, carved deep enough that they wouldn't disappear overnight. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt that presence again, standing behind me, breathing against my neck, waiting for me to turn. I left the lights on in every room, curled up on the couch with a blanket, clutching my phone like a lifeline. But the phone was useless. I tried to call friends, anyone who might come over, but each call dropped before the first ring. No matter where I stood in the house, the signal bar showed nothing. Dead air. I could send texts, but none of them delivered. It was as if the woods had followed me home, cutting me off from the world. Sometime near dawn, my eyes grew too heavy to keep open. Sleep claimed me in brief, jagged intervals, filled with flashes of the forest. Twisted trees leaning close, the clearing with its ring of stones, the shadow that never showed its face. Always, in the dream, a whisper crawled across my ear. "You'll come back." When I woke, the sun was high, streaming through the blinds in slanted beams. For the first time, relief filled me. Morning light was grounding. Rational. I almost convinced myself that the entire ordeal had been a waking nightmare, some hallucination brought on by exhaustion. But when I stretched, my sleeve pulled back, and the words were still there. "See you again." I couldn't sit still. The house felt claustrophobic, thick with air that refused to circulate. I left, needing people, noise, life to remind me I wasn't trapped in that forest anymore. The streets bustled with their usual rhythm, cars humming, neighbors walking dogs, children riding bikes. No one else seemed touched by the darkness that clung to me. I went to the cafe on the corner, ordered coffee I didn't want, and sat near the window, watching the world. But even there, with the chatter of strangers filling the room, I felt eyes on me. At first, I thought it was just paranoia again. Then I noticed something odd. Across the street, standing at the edge of the sidewalk where the shadow of a building stretched longest, someone lingered. Their body was difficult to make out, tall, thin, face obscured by the brim of a hood. They didn't move, didn't cross the street, just stood there, watching me. The coffee turned cold in my hands. My chest tightened, each breath shorter than the last. When I blinked, the figure was gone. Just like that. No one else seemed to notice. People walked past that spot as if nothing unusual had been there at all. I left quickly, unable to shake the feeling that every corner of the city now hid a pair of eyes waiting for me. By the time I returned home, my nerves were frayed raw. That night, I tried again to sleep. This time I locked my bedroom door, though I knew it wouldn't matter. Midnight came, and with it, the whisper. Not in my ear. Not in my head. From inside the room. Closer. My eyes shot open. The air was colder, visible in pale clouds each time I exhaled. I sat up, scanning the room. My desk, the dresser, the closet door half open, nothing seemed different. Nothing should have been different. But then, in the corner where the shadows pooled deepest, something moved. A shape peeled itself from the darkness. Tall, skeletal, with limbs too long, bending in unnatural angles. Its head tilted unnaturally to one side, and though its face was hidden, I felt its stare. I couldn't scream. My throat locked tight. I scrambled backward on the bed until my shoulders pressed into the headboard. The thing stepped forward, each movement jerky, like a puppet on invisible strings. And then it stopped. I realized why. The scratches on my arm burned again, searing hot, the words glowing faintly red in the dark. The figure seemed drawn to them, fixated, as if they were a signal. With a trembling hand, I grabbed the nearest object, a lamp, and hurled it at the thing. The crash of glass echoed in the room, plunging me into deeper darkness. When I fumbled for my phone to shine a light, the shape was gone. But the whisper remained. You belong to us now. I couldn't stay. Not in the house, not in the city, not anywhere that it could find me. I packed what I could before dawn, stuffing clothes and essentials into a bag. The only thought in my mind was escape. If the woods had cursed me, then maybe leaving would break it. Distance. Separation. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I drove until the city shrank in the rearview mirror, until the roads grew emptier, stretching into towns where no one knew my name. Hours passed before exhaustion forced me to stop at a roadside motel. Inside, the air was stale, but it was quiet. I collapsed onto the bed, too drained to care about the peeling wallpaper or flickering light. For the first time since that night, I felt close to peace. But peace is fragile. Sometime past midnight, I woke to a scratching sound at the door. At first, I thought it was just the wind, maybe a stray branch brushing against the frame. But then it grew louder. More deliberate. Scratch. 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 I sat up, frozen, staring at the thin strip of light beneath the door. A shadow interrupted it, long and narrow, moving back and forth as if pacing. Then, slowly, something pressed against the door from the other side. The wood creaked, bowing inward, as though fingers, long, skeletal fingers, were tracing its surface. My breath hitched. I didn't move. Didn't dare. Then came the voice, low and distorted, slipping through the cracks. You can't run from the woods. I clamped my hands over my ears, curled against the headboard, whispering to myself that this wasn't real. That if I ignored it, it would go away. But when morning came, and I forced myself to open the door, the carpet outside was littered with dirt, twigs, and damp leaves. As though the forest itself had been standing there, waiting. And carved into the motel door, jagged and deep, were the same words burned into my skin. See you again. I left the motel before sunrise. I didn't bother checking out, didn't look back at the ruined door with its carved words. Every instinct told me to keep moving. The road stretched endlessly ahead, ribbons of asphalt that blurred beneath tired eyes, but I refused to stop. Not this time. 4 hours, nothing happened. No whispers, no shadows, no breathing at the edge of my vision. The world looked normal again, farmland rolling past, the occasional truck roaring by, the sky pale with morning. It lulled me into a fragile sense of safety, a lie I desperately wanted to believe. But lies don't last long. By the time I reached the next town, exhaustion had wrapped itself around my bones. I pulled into a diner, a place with faded neon lights buzzing in the window. Inside, it smelled of coffee and grease, a normalcy so sharp it almost hurt. I slid into a booth, ordered pancakes I couldn't taste, and tried to convince myself I was just tired. Just frayed. The waitress, a woman with kind eyes and a voice full of honey, noticed the scratches on my arm when she set down my plate. Ouch, she said softly. That looks nasty. What happened? I hesitated, then pulled my sleeve down. Just thorns. Got caught on some branches. Her smile faltered, just for a second. Branches don't usually write words. The fork slipped from my hand, clattering against the plate. My throat tightened. What did you say? She blinked, confusion flickering across her face. I said, branches can be nasty. You should put something on it. But I knew what I'd heard. Every syllable etched itself into my skull. Branches don't usually write words. I left cash on the table and walked out without finishing the meal. The woman's eyes followed me to the door, and for a split second, her expression wasn't kind at all. It was knowing, almost expectant. Outside, the town looked different. The streets were too empty. The buildings leaned closer together, their windows like eyes. Even the air felt thick, heavy with silence. My chest tightened, panic simmering. I turned back toward the diner, only to find it gone. In its place stood a wall of trees. The woods. The shortcut had found me again. I stumbled backward, heart slamming against my ribs. Cars still rolled down the street, people walked along the sidewalk, but behind them, beyond every storefront, the forest loomed. Dark, endless, pressing in where it didn't belong. No matter how far I'd driven, how much pavement I'd put between myself and those trees, they had followed. I ran. Past shops and houses, past strangers who didn't seem to notice the encroaching wilderness. My feet carried me without aim, just away, always away. Yet every turn led me deeper. The ground shifted underfoot, concrete blending into dirt, sidewalks becoming uneven trails. My lungs burned, my vision blurred, but still I ran until I crashed into another clearing. The same one. The circle of stones. They waited for me like an old wound reopened. The air here was colder, the silence too deep, swallowing even the sound of my ragged breaths. My stomach twisted. I knew I shouldn't step inside that circle again, but something in me couldn't resist. It was as if invisible strings pulled me forward. As soon as my foot crossed the line of stones, the whisper returned. Welcome back. I spun, scanning the trees, but the voice was everywhere at once. My arm burned again, the words searing like fire beneath my skin. I clutched it, teeth gritted, but the pain only intensified. And then, shapes emerged. Not one. Not two. Dozens. Figures slipping from the shadows, long-limbed and skeletal, their movements unnatural. Their faces were featureless, but their presence was suffocating. They circled me slowly, like predators savoring the moment before the kill. One of them stepped closer. Its head tilted the way the figure in my bedroom had, unnatural and deliberate. When it spoke, the sound was wrong, layered, like multiple voices stacked together. "You can't leave. You belong here." My knees threatened to give out. "What do you want from me?" Silence. Then, in unison, all of them whispered the same thing. "Stay." The word rippled through the clearing, vibrating in my bones. The air grew colder still, my breath puffing white in the darkness. I backed up, nearly tripping over one of the stones. Panic surged, and before I could stop myself, I shouted, "I won't! You can't keep me here!" The whispering stopped. The figures froze. For a moment, the silence was worse than the voices. Then the nearest one lunged. I scrambled out of the circle, dirt flying beneath my hands as I crawled across the ground. The creature's arm shot forward, grazing my ankle with fingers like ice. A burning pain shot up my leg, as though frost had sunk into my veins. I kicked free, running blindly through the trees, branches slashing at my skin. The forest warped as I fled, trees twisting and rearranging themselves, paths splitting and closing. No matter which direction I turned, the shadows followed, always just at the edge of vision. My heart hammered, my lungs screamed, but still I ran until, without warning, the woods spat me out. Onto a quiet suburban street. My street. The forest was gone, replaced by neatly trimmed lawns and porch lights glowing in the night. My house stood at the end of the block, waiting like nothing had changed. I staggered forward, every muscle trembling. Relief should have hit me, but it didn't. Something was wrong. Too wrong. As I passed one of the houses, I caught sight of the windows. People stood inside, families, neighbors I'd known for years. But they weren't right. Their bodies were stiff, their heads all tilted at the same angle as the creatures in the woods. Their eyes were black voids, staring out at me. One by one, the lights in the houses flickered out, until only darkness remained. The entire street fell silent. Then, from the shadows of my own front yard, the whisper came again. "You can't go home." My legs buckled, and I dropped to my knees. The world tilted, spinning, collapsing in on itself. For a moment, I thought I'd pass out, sink into blessed unconsciousness. But instead, the ground gave way. The earth opened beneath me, swallowing me whole. Dirt and roots wrapped around my arms as I was dragged downward into suffocating darkness. I clawed, screamed, but it was useless. The woods had claimed me. When I stopped falling, I wasn't underground. I was back in the clearing. The stones. The figures. The same suffocating silence. Only now, the circle glowed faintly, etched with symbols I didn't understand. My skin crawled as I realized this wasn't just a place, it was a trap. A cage. And I was inside it. The figures closed in, forming a wall of shadow around me. The nearest one bent low, its faceless head inches from mine. Its voice slithered into my ear. "There is no shortcut out." I screamed, but the sound died in my throat, swallowed by the trees. The circle of stones felt alive beneath my feet. Each step sent vibrations through the ground, a pulse that seemed to sync with my own heartbeat. The figures didn't move closer. They didn't need to. The air was thick enough to hold me in place, trapped by something unseen. I realized, with a cold certainty, that the woods weren't just following me, they were waiting. Always waiting. I pressed my back against the nearest stone, gripping it like a lifeline. My arm burned where the letters were carved into my skin. "See you again," they hissed with a heat that burned deeper than flesh. The words pulsed, throbbing in a rhythm that seemed to speak directly to the shadowed figures around me. They were drawn to it. They existed for it. I tried to remember what little I knew about legends, about cursed places, about anything that could make sense of this nightmare. Every survival instinct screamed that I should flee. But flee where? Every path I saw twisted impossibly, like the forest itself was alive, rearranging to keep me inside. I had already learned that running could only take me further into the trap. Then a voice spoke. Not the whisper this time. A single human-like voice that carried through the silence of the clearing, soft but unmistakable. "Do you know why you're here?" I jerked upright. No figure had moved. No one spoke. And yet the words pressed into my mind, not my ears. Panic bubbled like acid in my chest. "Who's there?" I shouted. My voice cracked. "What do you want from me?" The words returned, clearer this time, almost maternal. "You were curious. You thought a shortcut would save you. You thought you could cheat the path. But shortcuts in these woods always have a price." I swallowed hard. My mind tried to reject it, to call it hallucination, but the circle, the glowing stones, the skeletal shapes, they were proof. "What price?" I demanded. A figure stepped forward from the shadows. Unlike the others, it moved smoothly, almost gliding over the forest floor. Its head was still tilted, but now I could see the faintest outline of a face, hollow eyes, a mouth frozen in an eternal scream. It raised one elongated hand and pointed at the glowing stones. "The woods take what you cannot see. They take what you try to hide from yourself. Your fear, your guilt, your desire to escape, they all belong to us now." I stumbled back, heart hammering. "I didn't do anything," I protested. "I just wanted to get home." The figure's head tilted further, impossibly. "And that is enough," it whispered. "Enough to mark you." The letters on my arm flared, burning white-hot now, searing pain shooting up my shoulder. I fell to the ground, gripping my arm, biting down on my lip to keep from screaming. The words began to change, morphing into new letters I couldn't recognize. Symbols, maybe, or a language older than anything I knew. They crawled up my skin like living fire, wrapping around my wrist, my shoulder, my chest. The figures around me stirred. Not with movement, but with intention. The air thickened, as if it had weight, pressing down on me, pressing into me. I could feel them all at once, 100 presences brushing against my mind, pushing and pulling, demanding my attention. And then I saw it. Behind the tallest shadow, hidden until now, something moved differently. A figure that wasn't human at all. Its body was tree-like, limbs gnarled and bark-covered, eyes glowing like coals in the darkness. Its mouth opened, a hollow cavity that exhaled fog into the clearing. And from that fog, whispers arose, hundreds of them, overlapping, telling stories I could barely comprehend. "You will join us," the tree-like figure said. Its voice wasn't words as much as it was thought, a direct implantation into my mind. "The shortcut binds you. The shortcut owns you. And soon, you will see what it means to belong to the forest." I scrambled backward, dragging my hands through dirt and debris. Every instinct told me to flee, but the edges of the clearing bent in impossible ways. I ran toward one exit, and it twisted, folding back on itself like a Mobius strip. Another path opened in front of me, only to vanish when I reached it. The figures whispered again, but this time it wasn't words. It was laughter, cold and hollow, echoing in the dark corners of my mind. The letters on my arm flared again, this time reaching my neck, my collarbone, burning as though the fire had moved beneath my skin. And then I realized the most horrifying thing. I wasn't just being followed. I had been marked. I was part of their world now, a living signal, a beacon that would draw more into the woods. I screamed into the night, pounding my fists against the dirt, begging for an escape, any escape. And then I saw it, a crack in the edge of the clearing, faint moonlight spilling through, thin as a thread. I knew it was a trick. The forest didn't make mistakes. But desperation outweighed reason. I bolted toward it. The ground shifted beneath me. Roots rose like snakes, curling around my ankles, slowing me. Figures lunged from the shadows, brushing my shoulders with icy fingers, trying to drag me back. My screams tore through the night, echoing off trees that didn't exist, bending the darkness around me. Then, just when I thought I would be swallowed, I broke through. I stumbled into the moonlit edge of the forest. The trees ended abruptly, replaced by a field of tall grass swaying in the night wind. I collapsed, gasping, sobbing, clawing at the ground as if I could dig a hole and disappear. My arm burned violently, but the letters had stopped moving. For now. I lay there for what felt like hours, listening. The forest was silent behind me. No footsteps, no whispers, no presence. For the first time in days, I felt alone. But the calm didn't last. A single word whispered on the wind, carried through the grass to me. Soon. I knew it wasn't a warning. It was a promise. I dragged myself to my feet, trembling. My mind raced. I couldn't go back. I couldn't stop. The shortcut had followed me here, and I knew with bone-deep certainty, that it would never stop. Every town, every street, every road I walked now could fold into the woods. Every shadow could hide a figure. Every step could take me closer to that circle of stones again. And the words on my arm, though no longer moving, burned with a memory I could not forget. See you again. I ran into the night, away from the field, away from the edge of the woods, hoping that somewhere, somehow, I could find safety. But the whisper followed, soft at first, growing louder with every step. You can't run. I knew it was true. I had already taken the shortcut. And shortcuts never end well. The road was endless. I didn't know where I was heading anymore. Every town, every street, every shadow could hide the woods waiting to reclaim me. My arm throbbed, the carved letters now faint but alive beneath my skin, a constant reminder of what had marked me. Sleep was impossible. Even closing my eyes invited whispers, shadows, and glimpses of those skeletal figures just beyond vision. I reached a small town just as dawn was breaking. Its streets were quiet, almost too quiet, and the houses looked ordinary, but my instincts screamed that nothing here was safe. Still, I needed refuge. I needed the illusion of safety, even if it was fleeting. I found a small convenience store, its neon open sign flickering lazily. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed, and the cashier, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, looked up at me with mild surprise. "Rough night?" he asked. I swallowed hard, gripping my bag as though it were a shield. "Yeah, just, lost," I muttered, my voice hoarse. He nodded, then looked past me, as if noticing something behind me. "Careful out there," he said quietly, almost to himself. "The woods, they've been creeping closer." I froze. My pulse spiked. "The woods?" I asked. He shrugged. "People disappear sometimes. Roads vanish. Trails open up where no one remembers them. It's hard to explain. Best you keep moving." I nodded, unsure whether he meant to warn me or condemn me. I left without buying anything, stepping back into the weak morning light. The street seemed normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that every shadow might hide the forest, that every corner could fold back into the clearing, back into the stones, back into the skeletal figures that had claimed me. Hours passed in a blur of roads and highways. I avoided towns when possible, kept to the outskirts, and tried to stay in motion, believing, praying, that distance could protect me. But deep down, I knew the truth. The shortcut wasn't just a place. It wasn't a path. It was alive, and it had followed me wherever I went. By evening, exhaustion had taken its toll. My legs were bruised, my arms sore, and my mind frayed beyond reason. I spotted an abandoned cabin on the edge of a clearing. It looked simple, unassuming, and for a moment, I believed it could be sanctuary. I pushed the door open. Dust swirled inside, the air thick and dry. Cobwebs draped the corners like fragile curtains. I dropped my bag and slumped into a chair, closing my eyes for what I hoped would be a few minutes of rest. But the forest didn't sleep. A tapping at the window jolted me upright. My heart slammed against my ribs. I pressed myself to the wall, staring at the dark glass. The forest was there, or at least a shadow of it. Branches scratched at the glass as though testing the barrier. The skeletal figures were outside, half hidden in the trees, waiting. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was too tired. The letters on my arm burned again, bright and white-hot, the pain radiating up my shoulder and down my spine. The whisper returned, filling the room from all directions. "You cannot hide." I fell to my knees, pressing my hands against the floorboards, trying to burrow into the world beneath the cabin. I would not go quietly. I would not let the woods claim me without resistance. And then I remembered. The clearing. The stones. The symbols etched into the ground. I had barely understood them before, but now, in desperation, it made sense. The circle had rules, ancient ones. The forest didn't just mark you, it bound you. It fed on fear, on guilt, on the desire to escape. But it also had a flaw. A loophole. I could not leave without acknowledging it. I rose shakily, ignoring the burning in my arm, and stepped outside into the night. The skeletal figures were there, surrounding the cabin now, whispering in unison, their voices layered like a chorus of wind through dead trees. I drew a deep breath and spoke aloud, every word trembling with fear and defiance. I see you. I see what you are. You are the woods. You are the path. You are nothing without those who walk it. The whispers faltered. The air pulsed, heavy with anticipation. One of the figures stepped closer. I met it head-on, though I could see nothing but darkness beneath its hood. My words grew steadier, fueled by the raw, desperate need to survive. You take people. You scare them. You mark them. But I will not be taken willingly. I will not belong to you. The ground shivered beneath me. The figures recoiled slightly, a collective hesitation I had never seen before. And then, slowly, the tallest one, the tree-like figure with glowing eyes, stepped into the clearing, bending down so that its face hovered above mine. Its voice cut into my mind, sharp and ancient. You cannot leave. You cannot escape. I can, I shouted. I will. Pain shot through my arm as the letters blazed again. I gritted my teeth and drew a line in the dirt with my fingers, tracing the same symbols I had seen in the clearing. The air around me shimmered. The figures hissed, recoiling, and the ground trembled. The forest fought, but I held my ground. I acknowledge you, I said, voice hoarse. I see the path. I see your power. But I will not be yours. I am not lost. A silence fell. The wind stopped. The whispers died. For the first time in what felt like days, the air was still. The figures froze, motionless, as if caught between worlds. And then they began to fade. Slowly at first, like smoke dissipating in the morning sun, until the clearing was empty. The tall, tree-like figure lingered for a moment longer, then too vanished, leaving nothing but the faint outline of the circle in the dirt. I sank to my knees, trembling, burning, and gasping. The letters on my arm were still faintly red, but the searing pain had eased. I was alive. Free, at least for now. But I knew better. The woods did not forgive. The forest did not forget. It had marked me, and it would follow me in ways I could not yet see. Shortcuts were never free, and the price was never paid all at once. I returned home slowly, taking the long way around every road, avoiding paths that might twist into something impossible. The city welcomed me with its mundane sounds, the hum of traffic, voices drifting from cafes, the distant bark of a dog. And yet, every time I looked over my shoulder, I saw a shadow lingering just at the edge of vision. Always there. Waiting. I never walked through the woods again. I avoided shortcuts, even if it cost me hours. I learned to live with the letters on my arm, a permanent reminder of the night I tried to cheat a path I should have never taken. And sometimes, when the night is quiet and the wind rustles just right, I hear a whisper. You'll come back. I know it's true. I know the woods will always find me, that shortcuts are never safe, and that once you've been marked, there is no true escape. The forest waits. And someday, I will have to face it again.